part of the Center of Ministry Civic Responsibility Forum. Today we have sitting with us today is going to be, everybody knows him as DJ No Name. It's Joel Ratliff. He's the VP and General Manager for Streetz 101.1. He's the CEO of Ratliff Media Consulting, and he's also the founder of Joel'sKids.net. It's helps for Leukemia Foundation. Everybody give him a hand for praise. Okay, we also have Malik here. Malik is the president and founder of the Janus Institute for Justice. He is also has his Master's of Divinity from the Vanderbilt University. He is also a part of several boards, and I think Malik told me he was working now as an instructor a professor at Schmidt College. And he's a part of the Art of Leaders for Southern Leaders, Art of Leadership for Southern Leaders committee. So everybody please give a round of applause. Okay. Today, part of where I would like to start is something that is really affects the nation these days is what some people feel is a real true frustration, the failing of a criminal justice system that doesn't seem to be fair. And then on the flip side, that we have people that may move in a more negative direction, in the killing of police officers and things like that. I guess we can start with DJ No Name. Could you give us your insight on how that's impacted the community, and what do you think about it?
As far as the criminal justice system?
Yes.
Well, that goes back to slavery. It's never been on the side of African Americans. We've always been under the thumb since slavery. So we could talk about that all day. Are we talking about current situations that are going on right now? Mm-hmm. And if we're talking about that, I'd say the police are totally out of control. I believe the mayor, city police all across the country, they're not doing their civic responsibility to go ahead and control these police officers, give them the correct training, knowing how to deal with our people and our black men in general. There's a lot of things that I think that we should be doing as black men who care about our families. But it's pertaining to us now at this point. We can't count on the justice system to give us law. We have to train up our own individuals and be with our own brothers in camaraderie to say, look here, when they come in this neighborhood, they know that me and brother are family. They know their brother and I are gonna look out for our families, his wife, your wife, his children. So when they come into our communities and they don't look like us, they know they just can't come in there on no humbug. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times it's been a divide and conquer, which comes from slavery, a divide the people, you know, and a lot of slick things that go down. But one of the things that I would say is we as black people have to start learning how to deal with each other more on a positive basis and looking out for each other instead of trying to do harm or get over on each other. I think that's one of the most important topics dealing with police and the justice system right now.
Malik, what are your thoughts?
Well, you know, I agree with my brother here. I think that this is a historic problem that does have its origins in slavery, starting with basically slavery being an unjust institution that created laws that were unjust to keep people in bondage, mentally and physically. And then after the emancipation of slaves, the community that was once the oppressing community was afraid that those slaves would now be entitled to the same rights. And there were amendments passed to ensure that those rights would be given to the slaves.
Speak, brother.
Once emancipated. But there were quickly laws put in place, another set of unjust laws to make sure that those rights would never be seen. And one of those started with the Black Codes, which led to now mass incarceration of blacks who are free Africans and enter into the criminal justice system. And then with the war on drugs that happened under in the end of the 70s, but definitely in the 80s, attacking our black communities and infiltrating our black communities, allow for mass incarceration as we see it today to exist. But all this was predicated on fear that the black bodies that were once domesticated now somehow became criminalized. You know, you were not afraid of them when they were on the plantations or in the domestic homes when they were caring for you and caring for your children or producing goods for you. But all of a sudden, this same group of people, after they're set free, are somehow now criminalized to be now untrustworthy. And I think that was a response out of fear that you never wanted those people to ever become first-class citizens. You wanted them to remain in their place and never realize the American dream that they so-called promised. And I think that the criminalization of blacks since slavery that happened then is still happening now, but in different ways. It's very nuanced, it's very slick, and it's done in a way that says to our current generation, know your history, but know the times. And know that now the same rights that they so-called gave our ancestors out of slavery, and are now so-called giving you out of the civil rights movement, 1964, 65, are still being undermined by the criminal justice system. It's always been there in the shadows to keep us from actually living out our rights as a community as a whole. So if we know that, then we have to also respond as a community and say, if they're using these things to divide us and to keep our communities broken, then we have to take ownership and no longer depend on the system to give us the healing that we need. And we have to learn how to heal within. So we have to identify where our brokenness is in our community. And we have to identify the source of healing coming from within us and among us, and not from some outside force, you know, or agency to protect us and to keep us whole.
Amen.
Okay. I agree with your points. On the other side, I know that most of, at least I believe, that on the side where police were getting killed, it's not like I didn't see it coming. I did see it coming. But what are your thoughts on how people react in that manner to try to provoke change?
Me?
Yes.
Well, you know, Minister Farrakhan says, you know, no one man can rise above the condition of his own people. Brother was speaking about the fear. The fear is very, very real, especially when Obama got into office. Then the Second Amendment applies to all of us. And so that's why you saw the mass buyings of guns from white people, because, oh, there's a black man in office. Oh, he's going to do all these things for these African Americans. We really don't have a second line of defense but the police, so let's buy up all the guns, make the guns seem bad to black people, and that way we try to keep them down. The reason why they're so fearful is because the same AK-15 you got, I got now. See, back in the days, you know, Jim Crow, and you see, we were slaves on the plantation. We didn't have no guns. You know, we couldn't go out there and, you know, we were just outnumbered. We were outgunned, we were out everything. We were out, as far as the law is concerned, we were just done. So now these young brothers, if we're killing each other in mass numbers, the way that we are killing each other over nothing, over a street named Chester, that street don't belong to you, brother. I mean, how much taxes do you pay for that street right there? Is your house stay on that corner right there? Does your grandmother live there? So, you know, the real question is, the white folks know now that, look, black folks got guns. We don't show them like white folks do, but we got plenty of guns. And this is the fear that is coming from the police department. They understand that black men out here are not afraid, and we do have troops. We have soldiers that are out here that will do what they need to do. Now, of course, you don't want to incite violence. I am not saying this. But if every person or people get tired. Remember, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. No matter how you look at it, you can say what, you know, if you're talking about somewhere in Israel, if you're talking about in Africa somewhere, if you're talking about in India somewhere, I don't care. One man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter, and we've always got to keep that in mind. So I just think police understand that, yeah, it's a very turbulent time in our country. The tricky, itchy finger is not on the black man's side, it's on the white man's side. And they keep provoking us as black people. So do you think this is, you know, 69 or 1870? Do you think we're back to the day where we're just going to let you do anything to us, and do we not respond, or we're just going to sing kumbaya and go to church and hope everything's going to be okay? Doesn't work that way anymore. And that's what you're seeing right now, of people that are fed up and they're just tired.
Mm-hmm. And to your point, I think that this is why the Black Lives Matter movement kind of emerged in the midst of all this police brutality, the criminalization, and then the being tired, sick and tired of being sick and tired of the criminalization of black people and poor people, and saying we have to respond because they don't value our lives. We have to value our lives, and we have to force them to acknowledge that our lives matter. And I think that this movement is one response, but I think other responses is knowing the history of how blacks, particularly during the time of Malcolm X, and then also in the rising of the Black Panther Party, how blacks really, the gangs were not the same type of gangs then as they are now. Mm-hmm. But these were groups of young people who came together and realized we're being brutalized by the police because of racism and Jim Crow. Mm-hmm. We have to defend ourselves and make sure that our communities are safe and that we're not being unjustly criminalized because police are coming in and planning things, police are coming in and creating disruptions that lead to us being seen as bad people or a bad community. And we have to start putting more of a good face on our community and saying, we are law-abiding citizens. Yeah. We are concerned about our property. We are concerned about our children. We are concerned about those who are hungry in our community. We are setting up breakfast programs. We are setting up programs that give access to medical care because you won't build hospitals in our community. So we're going to build medical clinics in our community. So we're going to take ownership of our community and we're going to defend our community. And so when that begins to happen, you're going to see another backlash because now that's not what they want to continue to happen. Right. So they have to break that up and start now finding other ways to kind of keep us divided. But it seems like the response that we've always given in the midst of our oppression or in the midst of us being criminalized has been positive. The Black Lives Matter movement is a response that's a positive response. The Black Panthers movement was a positive response. I mean, the Nation of Islam movement was a positive response. Yes. Many people don't know that the nation always had the stance when it comes to law that if a brother or sister in the nation is accused of breaking the law, you already know, the ethos was you already know that is a lie because no Muslim breaks laws. So you already have the situation that the accusation of itself has to be false. And if a brother is caught or sister is caught breaking the law, then they'll dealt with internally. But it wasn't the situation that we're going to let the law enforcement hold us hostage to their version of what law breaking is. Because we know that at the core of who we are law-abiding citizens. And I think that if we start with that rhetoric, we start with that understanding, then it gives us a sense of defense from the establishment to be able to come in and so easily criminalize us. Right. Because if you come into my community and you say, I'm a criminal, and I start believing that, then I'm going to let you search my house. I'm going to let you stop me and frisk me. I'm going to let you do all these other things because I'm believing the lie. I believe the hype. I'm talking Kool-Aid. But if I start off believing when I walk out of my house, I am a law-abiding citizen. I have not done anything wrong. I have rights that I need to be protected. Then I'm going to respond to you differently. And I'm not going to allow for you to kind of invade my space in a way that if I felt like I really was a criminal, I would easily. So I think that we have to change how we see ourselves, how we see our communities, and respond positively, and then the system will have to adjust itself accordingly. So that's what I said.
That was a great point because it was a good segue into our next point that we're going to talk about, and that's going to be the Black Lives Matter movement versus the Civil Rights Movement. Similarities and I guess pros and cons on how they, which I guess is more effective or would have been more effective or how do you see the comparisons and the positive results from the Black Lives Matter movement versus the Civil Rights movement?
Well, I mean, I'm still learning the Black Lives Matter movement because, and I do think the civil rights movement began with the abolitionist movement, slavery. I mean, there is no really time stamp we can put on when the movement began, when it ended. It's ongoing until people who are on the margins have fully realized their equality with whites who have power and privileges that they still exercise daily, and sometimes without knowing and sometimes knowing, that keeps us unequal in the public space. I think that the civil rights movement will always be in effect. I think that what's caused this question to arise is to think that after the passage of civil rights legislation in the 60s, somehow we had arrived to a point that need no more intervention by the government. Right. And I think that because of that misinformation, we think there are two separate movements now. But the reality of the Black Lives Matter movement is still an extension of the civil rights movement. And for those who know the history of the civil rights movement, there were a lot of groups that emerged during that time that were in opposition with King, and sometimes built coalition and solidarity with him, but there were a lot of people in the community trying to find multiple ways to deal with their civil rights. And so the movement has always been diverse, and that diversity has always been used as a point for those outside of the movement who want to see blacks and people of color and poor people disenfranchised as a way of continuing to try to divide and weaken the movement. By saying they're fighting for different causes. Right. But I think the Black Lives Matter movement shares the same cause as the King and Nonviolent movement, and that is that black empowerment has to start with respecting our human rights, our human dignity, to be treated equally with our white counterparts in every aspect of American society. And our lives matter to us first, and as a result of that, you should acknowledge that when you respond. So I think that that's the same philosophy underlying King's movement and all the other movements within the civil rights movement, and I think the Black Lives Matter movement is an extension of that.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's a hyper-extension of the civil rights movement. I think we're still fighting for the exact same thing, but just on different levels in time. You know, the young people today are more aggressive. To me, they're more assertive in what they want. But there's one other piece that I find very interesting. You have to excuse me because I've got dry mouth through cancer. One thing I find very interesting about them and about the Black Lives Matter movement is they're really focusing on spending money with our own people first. $1.1 trillion as a people we will spend fiscally this year. Now, where is that money going? Who are you giving your money to? Do you know the Jews? Do you know before they even let a dollar come out their community, it moves over, it turns over 8 times before it leaves and touches one of us, if it ever even will touch one of us. The Asians, 12 times. The Mexicans, 6 to 7 times. As soon as we get a dollar in our hand or somebody writes a check, guess where it goes? 9 times out of 10, it won't go to somebody looking like me or you. It'll go to somebody that don't look like me and you, which can empower and help our own people. We have got to, as a people, and this is where I think Black Lives Matter is so important in the overall discussion of what's going on. They're aggressive, they're young, they're educated, they're focused, but at the same time, in order for us to go ahead and move forward as a people and stop some of the shenanigans around here, we have started to go ahead and let that money come from my pocket to this brother's services right here. This brother's services goes back to a brother who's got distribution services in his company, or a nail tech that's a sister, you know what I'm saying, or a car lot that a brother owns, or we've got to start spending our money with our own people. This will stop a lot of the things that you see out here in these streets, even in cities across the world, because white people seem to think that they get their money from us as soon as it leaves our pocket. And so once we get financial control of our money, and once we pull our monies together as a people, now I know we've got some issues pertaining to customer service with our people. I get this. But there are professionals like me and other companies that will come in and will give your people seminar on how to go ahead and treat people and how to increase revenue by the way you treat them. And this is the things that we have to do. And this is why I like Black Lives Matter so much, because it's just not about you did our people wrong, or you shot our brother in the street, or you assassinated our sister. That's majorly important. But there's other components that put this whole thing together. And then, you know, the other thing is, and then I'll shut up because I can talk all day. The other thing is that we as older gentlemen and older sisters, we can no longer afford to be afraid of our own children. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. I know these kids got their pants down and they talk tough, and you know, I'm on MLK, 12th Street, Asher, I'm on Barrel every day. I say, young man, pull your pants up, man. Where you going? What's going on in your life? Oh, no, man, hey, man, get in school. We can't, these kids look so mean, and you don't know what they got on them these days, so a lot of times we as older people are like, but we can't do that.
That's right.
We can't. And that's another thing that Black Lives Matter brings to the table. Yeah.
That's a very interesting point you bring up, because I have a philosophy that if they're within your reach, it's your obligation to say something. I've had through the years several kids, either in the neighborhood or my kids' friends or whatever the case was, and they would be somewhere, whether it's a basketball game or whatever the case is. Because of our relationship and they knowing me, I can walk into a basketball stadium or whatever, and they may have their hands down and say, oh, that's Coach Washington. So they'll pull them up.
Yeah.
Or even when they came to say they would come to my house or whatever, and if I was working, my rule was you was working. So I ain't gonna be cutting my yard, man, you come up here playing basketball. No, everybody needs to work. Right. If I'm working, everybody working. So, especially when you're within my reach, meaning you're eating from my table, right. I'm giving you money, I'm helping you out or whatever. So if you're within my reach, whether I go to church with you, or I see you, or I know your parents, whatever the case is, I'm not gonna check you all the time in a negative way, but I'm gonna check you when I see you. How you doing? Like what you're saying,
right.
how are you doing or whatever. But if you're doing the wrong thing, it's my obligation to at least say something. You may not totally do everything that I said, but this is what I tell people all the time. And it is, I think we all grew up with adults or people around us we didn't like. We couldn't stand or whatever the case was or whatever, but we respected them, and whenever we were around them, we kind of cleaned up our act. We may have done something else when we got around the corner.
Right.
But so for my thing is, it doesn't matter where you put me, I'm gonna do my obligation of saying something because you're within my reach.
Exactly.
The next thing I would like to kind of go over is, and we may have touched on it a little bit, why are we more reactive versus proactive? Because a lot of the people that I've seen some people that may have joined Black Lives Matter or whatever the case is or whatever, and we know in any case, you never have 100% of positive participation or whatever. But why do you think we're more reactive versus being proactive and doing those things in our community that we need to do or whatever, and not really falling off after things die off, after they stop maybe killing our kids in the streets or whatever, that dies off and it's a year or two later? Why are we more reactive versus proactive?
Well, I mean, my initial response is, I think it's a lack of leadership and self-leadership. When you don't have leaders in place that keep the momentum going after the high notes of the movement begin to shift and things begin to calm down, then you have a problem. People just become, they lose focus. And then they go back to their same routine. So leadership has to step in and be consistent on demanding that people stay at it, keep working towards a common goal, a common objective, year in, year out. Because this is a democratic political machine. And just because elections are over doesn't mean that the political process is not still going on.
Correct.
So we have to stay engaged beyond the presidential elections. We have to stay engaged on a local level, on a statewide level. And so when the presidential elections come up every 4 years, we're already organized and we already have a base that we can leverage. Same thing with businesses. I mean, we see businesses coming up all the time in our communities, particularly black businesses. And, you know, we may stay engaged for the first few months, but you know, 6 months later, we're no longer patronizing them. We're no longer consistently giving our money. And then when they close, we say, wasn't that a shame? They didn't have the customer service. They didn't have the things they needed to, that we would want to come back and support later. And so then we begin to blame the business for its failure and not our participation and our resources that we share with the business. And so I think that a lot of that's reactive. I think a lot of that is the fact that at the core, we don't want to take ownership of our lives, our communities, and their successes and failures in our community. We're always looking for a leader, quote unquote, to pull us out or to guide us out so that we can find our way. And I think that we're in a different era now where individuals have to realize in their circle of influence, they are leaders.
Exactly.
And it's not about, you know, it's not who are you waiting for. You need the phrase that my colleague, Sister Tafara always says, is that she learned from her elder is, they say to each other, what are you going to do, leader? They don't say, wait for the leader. They say, what are you going to do, leader? And if everybody realizes that they're a leader, then they take a different ownership of how to respond to the problem. They're not reactive anymore. They're proactive in saying, okay, if I'm a leader, then what's the problem? What's the solution? And let's work towards that common goal. You know, so I think that's part of it. But there's, and I'm going to end now, but I want to leave with 3 points I want to make about leadership. I've been in this community for 8 years. I've worked in the social justice movement. I worked in the environmental justice movement. The environmental justice movement is lacking black presence. Sierra Club, Audubon, major white organizations who are concerned about the environment and nature, who will be the ones that will respond to a Katrina, okay, or flooding from a natural disaster kind of standpoint. Blacks who have been disproportionately impacted by environmental disasters, Katrina being one of them, and then the Gulf Coast, all those black communities, poor communities impacted. But we have not organized to respond proactively to these things. We always react. So I think in the environmental justice side, it's the same problem as the social justice side, is that when these things happen, we should not be scrambling.
Correct. I agree.
When these things happen, we should already be poised to know who to call, who has the resources, who can bring the transportation, who has the politicians here. I mean, we should already be organized. And the fact that we're not is because we haven't taken ownership of our own problems and our own solutions. And so that's what I'm aiming with that. I mean, I can say more about leadership in the black community.
You said it right.
That's part of the issue.
You said it exactly. You said it exactly right. We're not, you know, what happens is once we get to a certain age in life, as black people, a lot of us, I'm not going to say all of us because I don't want to generalize, but a lot of us are happy with our Mercedes and our 4-bedroom home, and wifey's got her Mercedes, and kids are well off in a safe school that's got a good educational system, and I go to church on Wednesday and Sunday, and I hook up and play golf at my country club with my brothers, and life is good. Once again, there's no one man that can rise above the condition of his own people. If you leave with nothing else, from me, leave with that right there. No one man can rise above the condition of his own people. We are not creating enough leaders today, young leaders. You know, the things that you see on TV and that you hear, and I know I own a radio station, and I know this is going to sound bad, but what you hear in that radio station is bull. It's strictly entertainment. What you see in that TV, bull. These people are getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to act a fool. But if you go out there in real life and act like that at your job or your school or whatever, guess where you're going to be? You're going to be in the penitentiary or dead. Right. You know what I'm saying? So what I'm really saying to what brother said was, we as a people, and he said it just right, we need to organize, but also we have to learn how to control the narrative. We do not control our own narrative. We let white folks give us a narrative, and then they create the narrative because we don't own the TV stations.
Right.
We don't own CNN, we don't own Fox News, we don't own MSNBC, we don't own NBC, ABC, we don't own any of what the BET stuff that we get is real watered down. It's buffoonish in kind of a way. Like, we get the information, but it's kind of spoon-fed in that sense. And then when we come up with organizations that stand up for black people, then what do white people do? That's a racist organization. And then, you know what? We're not going to go ahead and give them money because they speak pro-black. Well, you know, everybody else do. The Hispanics got theirs. Europeans got theirs. The Jews got theirs. They got their own defamation league. We can't have a defamation league. If you say things about African Americans, if you're still saying nigga on TV, you don't think we should be mad about that? You allow this movie to play over and over and over again, and you just let that out like it's nothing, or you kill our people and you show that like it's a video game over and over 50 billion times in one day. Enough is enough. We have got to control the narrative. If these news people are wrong, we let them know that they are wrong, and we will not watch you, we will not buy your advertising, we will not do anything if you go ahead and put our people out in a bad light. That's not just. So, you know, my thing is this: every young person in here is a leader. You have to decide exactly what you want to be and what you want to contribute to the universe. It's a big place out there, but it's a small place because of technology now. You can be impactful, and you can be impactful to your friends. I would say, touch your friends with positivity. Nah, man. I just don't want to be a rapper. I want to be a doctor. You know, I want to be a lawyer. You know what I'm saying? I want to do something that serves God's people. You know what I'm saying? Everything's not about flash and bang and all. Man, come on, man. If that was just the case, we all be dead. You know, when Trump talks about black people, he talks about black people like we're all just grouped into one big group. What's wrong with that white man? He talks about, you heard the speech the other day, I was sitting there checking him out. Black people, your unemployment rate is this, and I said, no, you generalize, bro. There's a lot of black people that are doing excellent in life and trying to give back. You should say there's a minority of your people that maybe need a push in this area. That would have been more receptive to me. Right. But you just don't say black people blanket statement. But anyway, let me end it like I say. I'm sorry, I should say. No, I think it's important that the young people that are in here and people, we touch our people and we engage them. And it's okay to say, you know what? I don't think I want to do it your way, but maybe you should try to come look my way. Maybe we can help each other on the ideas of information and trying to get, you know, something that is universal that can work for everyone involved. So, I mean, that's just kind of what I think.
Okay. How do we, on the ground level, how do we find effective solutions? What are some ground level things that we could do as if I believe that there's nothing I can do that actually would invoke change? What would you recommend somebody at the ground level with very minimal, that they think they have very minimal, what am I trying to say? Resources or whatever. How would they start? What would be a good place for them to start as far as affecting their community? Where would they start?
That's a good question. You know, like I said, people are so caught up, in people's individual lives. You know, everybody's got, my wife has got this going on, my kids are doing this, my grandbaby's doing this, my mama's sick right now, I got to see about her. You know, and so it's time. We're all just, you know, like it's constantly moving, but we've got to make a concerted effort to spend some time saying, hey, brother, you heard about this? We need to talk about this. Sister, what you think about this? I mean, when resources are small, what you do, you've got these amazing things called technology. I mean, yeah, they're a distraction, don't get me wrong, but they can also be used for good. And you can reach people, a certain amount of people in your group at a very quick time by just a post. You know, and you'll find out people that are really concerned because they'll be interactive with you. A lot of people, you'll be surprised, they just don't care. Now, how do you wake them up? Lawan, brother, by these killings in the last, let's just say since Obama's been president, if that hasn't gotten our people's attention by now, I don't know what will. All of us have sons and daughters in here. When they leave the house every single day in their cars, you're looking at your phone like, please God, make sure they make it this safe.
That's right. That's right.
You know what I'm saying? So, you know, I don't know what to say to that. I mean, we can reach them, but the point is, do you care? You know, and do you have the time? Will you give the time to show that you care? But that's an excellent question, because the media is not going to tell you to go meet up with them. Fox 16 ain't going to say, oh, African Americans and Black Lives Matter are meeting up here, da-da-da. KRK is not going to say it. Power 92 ain't going to say it. I mean, we'll say it because we're black owned, you know, but then, you know, that's the black station. And then when I start talking black on my radio station, then the white boys don't want to cut me a check. So it's very difficult to play that game, but still, it's got to be done. So I don't know. You doing what you did, you bringing this together, you bringing the brothers and sisters here, the cameras here, that's a start. It's always a start. You just got to keep on moving it. Brother, what do you think?
Well, I'm perplexed by that whole question because, you know, I've worked with churches for over 20 years, and one of the things that I know people outside of the church see the potential of the church having the ability to do something at the grassroots level is because the church is the only independent economic structure in the black community that has within it resources that can be easily used in the black community but keeps it in-house. If you put together all the offerings that are collected on any given Sunday morning and all the black churches across the nation, non-tax, I mean, we're talking millions of dollars that can be leveraged immediately overnight to impact the black community surrounding these churches. So the first thing that I've always said to people who are in the Bible Belt, where there's a whole bunch of churches on every corner almost, is that begin to have real live conversations with these pastors who use the rhetoric that we're here for the community on every Sunday morning, but the community is not being responded to, and have the community pretty much hold their churches in that community responsible to say, you say you're here for us, and you have resources inside your house that says they're for us. How can we begin to have a conversation about how we would want to respond to you being for us by sharing your resources with us? You know, that's the first line of, I think, negotiations, is to get people of faith to come together and say, we're stopping the rhetoric that charity is what our faith tells us that we must be about. But the reality is we must be about justice, and charity is not justice. Charity brings up the issues that make us not respond to the injustices, but it's not in and of itself justice, because creating feeding programs, which I think you all do a great job of that, is to highlight the fact that people are hungry. Well, what are the causes of the hunger?
That's right.
Okay, we want your stomach to be fed, and we don't want you to have hunger pains, but now that your stomach is quiet, and now you're able to sit down and have a conversation with us about your hunger, how do we end your hunger? You know, so that's justice work. And I think that we get churches to begin, and nonprofits who proliferate the community, who do this charitable work, we get the churches and nonprofits together and come to Jesus meeting and say, hey, all your work is to help people who have immediate needs that are caused by some kind of systemic problem. So how do we let this immediate need tell us what the system is creating that causes this need, so that we can begin to do the work of justice? And I think that that is the way now people who are in the room, they all have resources there, they all say their resources are for charity, and now you pull back the cover and say, here are the root causes of this problem. And now let's how do we redistribute our resources, sharing, so we can deal with the real cause. And that may be forming committees and community groups that deal with policy. That may be forming committees, including
It may be the formation of community groups and committees that look at, if we're not going to take control of our education and educate our children, we should have underachievement, and now they're dealing with it. But you can't begin to talk about the issue unless you first deal with charity. And how to take charity and transform that charitable issue into a justice issue.
Yeah, yeah.
Because there are resources already in the community that deal with the charity need in that community. But they're not focusing those needs to the justice issue behind the charity. And I think that that's the beginning part, at least for me, dealing with nonprofits every day and churches every day, is how do we begin to have that conversation.
And that's very interesting, because as I had mentioned to you before we started, that was my frustration when I was called to pastor. I said, Lord, I don't want to duplicate the status quo, because what I'm seeing is we're having a really good emotional experience, but our lives are not changing. We're not doing anything that's really affecting our lives. And don't get me wrong, I love Black church, I do. But what's frustrating is we don't have something in place to actually bring people to the next level. Because mentioning a little bit of what you were talking about a little bit earlier, it seems like whenever I'm dealing with a challenge in my life, I feel like I got to start from scratch. Whether it's my kids' education, or paying the bills at the house, or running through a foreclosure or bankruptcy, whether it's the right decision or not, it feels like I got to start from scratch. Where do I go? I don't know where to go, and where to get any advice or whatever. And now that I'm in my mid-40s now, I wish I had known this stuff when I was 20-something. I'm like, wow, where was this at? And what's frustrating to me about that is that I know those things, and everybody around me were going through the same thing.
Right.
People that were older than me went through the same thing, but nobody talked about it.
Right. But the reason why, though, LaJuan, and we've been in the same circles. The Black church has failed its people. And I'm sorry, I know somebody's going to see this and be mad at me. You know, but they have, and the definition of insanity is what? Over and over, expecting what?
Different results.
Exactly right. So these white politicians, Black politicians, come on in and come to the big mega churches, show their face around election time, saying what they're going to do, and then once they're elected, same old, same old.
Right.
See, and it brings me back to, again, you know, what I said before. You have to be able to go and talk with these young people in the streets. The churches out here that have got men's groups, and the sisters out here with the men's groups should be behind them. In these neighborhoods where they know there's high crime, a lot of bogusness that's going on in the streets, Friday night, Saturday night visual, walking through, saying, hey, young brother, what are you doing? A group of men. What do you want? What do you want for your life, man? I mean, do you want to go to the penitentiary? Do you want to be buried? Do you want everybody wearing shirts saying R.I.P. to you? What are your dreams? See, we're not talking to our youngsters in these streets. And there's a lot of our youngsters out here in these streets. Not just, you know, young guys, but young women as well. And so, you know, the church, I think the church is, to me, word of God, say what you got to say. We want to make a bigger building, bigger TVs. I want to buy a bigger car for the pastor. You know what I'm saying? But then everything around the church looks like, And the people are hungry. And you got this facility, you know, and you ain't taking care of the people that serve your direct community. So I'm not going to say all churches. I'm not going to generalize and say that, because I really don't want to believe that, because I know, and this sounds bad, but I know white churches that really get in their communities, and I know Black churches who do. But we as people who love God, whether it be Jesus or whether it be Allah, whatever you believe in, we have to do a better job about engaging what's going on in the neighborhoods in which we serve. That's the only way you're going to get to them. If you get 2 knuckleheads out of 15 boys on a street corner and you convert 2 of them, you've done something major. You've changed 2 lives. You know what I'm saying? And that's where we one-on-one have got to go with this, brother. That's what I think. I think we got to touch them. I think we got to say, look, I used to be like you. What do you do now? Well, I own this, and this. Well, how did you do that? Why don't you come to the radio station and see me one day? We have to mentor on the spot. You see what I'm saying? And that's the way we're going to go ahead and start drawing new revolutionaries. Going with the revolution, because the revolution is ongoing and it will be televised. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I think.
And so now I'll speak, because I know everybody's wondering, okay, she's sitting there, but she's not saying anything. I just want to say that I've definitely enjoyed all the conversation that's going on the panel. And the only thing that I want to interject is while everyone was talking and while I was listening, it just kept coming to me that it all comes back to one. And everything starts with one. Everything starts with you, whether it's the church, whether it's an organization, whether it's whatever it is that you're doing, it starts with you. And you can talk about it and complain about it and see it. You can say the church this, the white people that, the black people that, but it's you. What are you doing? You can't be on your couch sitting and looking and talking about what's going on. If you're not getting up and doing something, you don't have to do everything, because you can't change the world. You can't change it, I'll say all the problems in the world, but you can change one. You can change one problem in the world. If you get on that one problem and you focus on that one thing and you make that your purpose when you get up in the morning, the first thing you need to do is find out what your purpose is. Because your purpose is not to sit around and watch what's going on to complain about it, but it's to get up and do something about it. So our topic is on civic responsibility, and we all have civic responsibility. We have the responsibility to do something. And I don't care if it's just to be a mother. Talk to your children. If you say, my purpose here is to be a mother, then make sure that you are raising that child. Make sure, if it's a father, make sure that you're talking and teaching your kids about who they are, who they really are, and what kind of impact they have, and the fact that they are a leader, because we're all leaders. It's not you. Everything comes back to me. So when you get up and get ready to complain about anything, look at yourself first. And that's what I want to say.
One thing that's really important to me is, and I'm glad you said so. One thing that's really important to me is, and I usually hear it because I've been in church all my life. I hear it around offering time in black churches all the time. It says everybody has something to give, and that's true. But the purpose of why you said it is a small portion of what's really meant by that statement. Everybody does have something to give. Everybody does have something to contribute in society, because we're all here on purpose. We're not here, as my wife said, just to be sitting on a couch somewhere to do something or whatever. But we're all here and we can do something. And it's, for me, we're of course in an election season. And if people say, okay, what can I do? We can start with something that a lot of folks, it's kind of similar to Jesus' story of hung, bled, and died. And we know a whole lot of black people that have hung, bled, and died just to give you the right to vote. So get off your couch and actually go out there and vote. Participate. It doesn't cost you anything, just a little bit of your time to go in there, spend about 5 or 10 minutes or whatever and vote. That's something that we can do, as well as be more active, and whether it's a neighborhood association, a community center, or whatever, do something to contribute in some kind of a way. Because people will ask a lot of times about what they are, what can I do or whatever. My thing is, if you're talking to God, God is always talking, we just not listening. I always say that all the time. God is always talking, we not listening. If we listen to what God is telling us, there is somebody out there that's either following us, or we could help, we could assist, or something we can do, because you have something to contribute. I don't care if you don't have a dime in your pocket. You have something to contribute to our society.